Okay.
Dalit
If one
said,
said once this is the one that was confusing with
yeah, that's right. This is the crazy confusing math.
if one set aside an Issa and on account thereof he ate half of it and went to another place where it was worth a punyan, he may on the account of eat for another Issa. If one set aside a punyan on the account thereof and he ate half of it and went to another place where it was worth one Issa, he may eat on the account of it eat for another half. If one set aside an Issa of Maaser Sheni, he may on account of it eat for or an 11th part of the Issa and for 100th of an Issa. Beit Shammai says throughout 10. Hill says in case of certain 11 and in case of the certain 11 and in case of the my 10. Okay. And here we go. All coins found a chulin, even a golden dinner with silver and copper coins. If one found a potsherd with them and said Maaser was written on it, it is Maaser. If one found a vessel on which Korban was written, Yehuda says if it was an earthenware, it was kulan, but its contents are korban. And if it was metal, it is korban, but its contents are kulan. They said to him, it is not customary for people to put kulan into korban. Okay.
Okay. Um, carrying on in the same line, this is where the previous Mishnah was where things were explicitly labeled. Now, people use abbreviations, and as the Mishnah will allude to, there was during times of religious oppression, people had to like try and skirt around the fact that the oppressors would check and see if they're keeping all Jewish rituals and they would have to try and find a way to not do it. So Hamotze Kli V'Kasav Alav Kuf. So Kuf was the commonly accepted abbreviation for Korban. So it wouldn't be written out explicitly. They just say, "Oh, it's just Kuf. It's an abbreviation for somebody's name or something." Okay. Um, Mem designates Maaser. Now, what kind of Maaser would that be? Would it be Maaser Rishon, Maaser Sheni? Well, there's no point in labeling it Maaser Rishon because Maaser Rishon is basically Chulin, which just happens to belong to a Levi. Okay, but so this obviously is talking about Maaser Sheni.
Okay.
Okay, Dalet is for Demai, Tes is for Tevel, and Taf is for Truma. Shebashas Sakana hayu kosvin Taf Tachas Truma. They used to write these abbreviations because of the danger of anti-Semitic oppression. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Kulam Shemos B'nai Adam Hem. He says, forget it. Basically, if you find something with these things written on, you do not have to assume that they're anything other than chulin. And we're so basically, if it's money and there's no din of hashavas aveda, you can just keep it and pretend it's and assume that it's chulin because these letters are basically meaningless. Amar Rabbi Yossi, afilu matzah chavis v'hi malea peros, v'kasav alea truma, hare elu chulin. And he goes even further than this. He's not just saying about the abbreviations. He's even saying you find a barrel full of produce, and the barrel has written on it truma. Says you
Mhm.
can ignore it. Shani Omer, why? Eshtakad Haisam alea peros truma upina. That it's an old barrel that was previously used for truma, and he finished using it, and now he refilled it with chulin. So this is an incredible leniency that Rabbi Yossi is saying over here, and it's quite shocking that he would be so lenient on this point, and the Chachamim, of course, disagree with
Yeah.
this. Once it's written on Netzrag Laim Ladavar, you've got it there. But apparently, he feels confident enough to, and I'm not sure why, because I mean, Truma is a doraisa. So if you
Right.
have a suffix, it's curious to me that Rabbi Yossi would be so makil on something that's potentially an Isser doraisa. But nonetheless, that's his position. Um, yeah, okay, I guess there must be somewhere where this debate is taken further, but I don't see it in my commentary. Okay.
It says here say that they replaced it with Hulim, but the owner forgot to delete the marking.
Mhm.
Not, you know.
Right, but he has to tell a whole story to understand why this isn't really Truma. I was like, why
Right.
not take the simplest explanation that it is Truma? Okay. Yud base. Ha'omer libno. The guy says to his son, I put some Maaser Sheni bezaves zo. Um, it doesn't. I wonder. I'm not sure why the Mishnah had the need to say he told his son to go and get the Maaser Sheni from that corner. He could have gone himself to get it from that corner, and it would be the same. We're going to have the same
Right.
story over here. But he comes matzah bezavis acheres, and he comes and finds it in a different corner. So now, what must he assume? Must he assume that the Maaser Sheni was moved from that corner to the other corner? Um, no, he doesn't. He must assume that the Maaser Sheni was taken away and this is other produce in its place. All right, Elu chulin. If it's in a different place than what his dad said, then we assume that this is different produce too. Following on from this principle, hayasham maneh, if he says there's a maneh of Maaser Sheni inside in this corner, and he comes and finds matzah masaim, he says, well, there's two maneh over here. Hashar chulin, so he can redeem half of it, and the other half is assumed to be chulin. Okay, so he doesn't assume that his father made a mistake about the quantity. He just says, okay, there was 100 and there's 200 now, so therefore 100 of it is chulin. What happens if it's masaim? If father said there was 200 and he finds 100, well, this should be clear and obvious. Hakol maaser. It's just that 100 of it went away.
Mhm.
So it's not that it was all taken away and replaced by some chulin. You just say that 100 of it was taken away. Okay. Perikei, Kerem Revai. Okay, so now we're talking about Revai. The fourth year produce is treated, according to Beis Hillel, it's identical to Maaser Sheni in the way you treat it. According to Beis Shammai, it's you actually have to take Trumas and Masros off it as well, and before you can you take it up to Yerushalayim, but Beis Hillel say Kula Lagas, the whole thing goes to the vineyard, it goes to the wine press. So so now you have so because it's a fourth year vineyard, um, there's a certain concern that people who coming and taking grapes off it might not realize that this is Revai. And why
Mhm.
would they be taking grapes off it? Because our whole scenario is based on the fact that it's the Shemitah year, which isn't explicitly stated at the beginning.
Okay.
Okay, so we're now talking about the Shemitah year, when people are free to walk into the fields and take whatever produce, but Ravai doesn't stop for the Shemitah.
Mhm.
So he's got to put some sort of simon on the field to so that people who are coming and taking grapes understand that this is actually it's Ravai and therefore has to be treated like Maaser Sheni. You have to redeem it and take the money to Yerushalayim or take the produce itself to Yerushalayim, one way or another. So Mitzayin also because it's those Adamah, you designate it by putting clumps of earth around it. So people will walk and say, "What are these clumps of earth going around here?" And they say, "Oh, that's a siman." Everyone knows that that's the siman for a Kerem Ravai. Ah, now we know. Thank you very much. Okay, what happens if it's Orla? If it's in a third year or in the first 3 years, in which case it's completely usher to have any. Okay, shall Orla b'charsis that you put with clay.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, there's some symbolism over here that we'll see that with these different things. Adama is earth and it's fertile and it can still be eaten, but it's just got a warning on it. Clay, nothing in growing clay. It's infertile. You can't plant anything in it, and therefore the clay is a simon that this produce here is aser. Do not enter. Do not take the produce. Vishel Kvaros Basid. And when it comes to graves, if you have a fresh grave somewhere, this again would be anywhere that Kohanim have got right of way. You've got to designate these graves. I mean, never mind just Kohanim. Even Yisraelim who want to stay Tahor don't want to go walking over graves. So those you have to mark with lime before you put up a headstone. You have to mark them with lime, which is white, which of course is similar to bones.
Right.
Okay, so that warns people that better stay away from here if you want to be tahor. Or mamche v'shofech. So you've got it. So mamche v'shofech. He mashes it up and pours it out with a liquid and pours it out on the ground so it's bright white and very clearly visible. Amar Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel b'medvar mamorim. When is all this said? B'shvius. This is all talking about the Shemitah year. Well, at least of of the first two cases. The graves is pretty much any time. Um, but nonetheless, Hatznuim manichim es hamaos v'omrim kol anilkat mizeh yehei mechulal al hamaos ha'elu. But not but um, they say even when you've designated things and you've got and you've got a Kerem Ravai, um, the the tzaddikim, the real righteous people, they put aside money in case people take produce without realizing that it's Kerem Ravai, and they say whatever people take is redeemed onto this coin.
Okay.
And that way they take away the michshol from the Amei Aretz who don't know how to do to do the right thing. And this again applies in the Shemitah year when people are um, when people are allowed to go in and take things. However, there is an opinion that even in non-Shemitah years, the Tznuim would even do this for the Kerem Ravai in case people even for people who steal their produce and they kind of I don't know why it's like you would think that okay, listen, if somebody's going to come and steal my produce, that's their bloody problem.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Good. Okay. Um, the base should.
Yeah.
Okay. Over here. Okay. If some of one's sons were unclean and some clean, he lays down the cellar and says, "Let the cellar be in exchange for what the clean drink. Thus the clean and the unclean may drink from one jar." A man may not say to his fellow, "Take this produce, go up to Yerushalayim for a share," but he may say to him, "Take it up, and we shall eat it and drink it in Yerushalayim." But they may give it each to give it eat. They may give it each to each other as a present. One may not buy truma with Maaser Sheni money because it reduces the number of his consumers. But Rabbi Shimon permits. Said Reb Shimon to them, "Why, if they rule leniently regarding peace offerings, which he renders pickle notorious unclean, shall we not rule leniently in the case of truma?" They said to him, "Why, if they rule leniently regarding peace offerings, which are permitted to non-priests, shall we rule leniently in the case of truma, which is forbidden to non-priests?" Okay.
Trumos. Speaking of trumos,
Okay.
Efes.
If a doubt of uncleanliness arose concerning a bar of truma, Rabbi Elazar says if it was lying on an exposed place, it should be put in a hidden place. If it was uncovered, he should cover it. But Rabbi Yeshua says if it lay in a hidden place, he should put it in an exposed place. And if it was covered, he should uncover it. Rag Hamiel says to him, let him do nothing new about it. If a jar was broken in the upper part of the press and the lower part is unclean, Reb Eliezer and Reb Yeshua agree that if he could save it from one clean revi'it, he should save it. But if not, Reb Eliezer says, let it descend and become unclean, and let him not make it unclean with his hands. So too, if a jar of oil was upset, Reb Eliezer and Reb Yeshua agree that if he can save it from one clean revi'it, he should save it. But if not, Reb Eliezer says, let it descend and be absorbed, but let him not gather it up with his hands. Okay.
All right. Demai.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. The my olive base. If one adores his friend to eat with him and he does not trust regarding tithe, if he eats with him on the first Sabbath, even though he does not trust him regarding tithe, provided he says to him, it is tithe, but on the second Sabbath, even if he vowed not to derive any benefit from it, he may not eat unless he tithes. Reb Eliezer says one need not designate Maaser Sheni of Demai, but the sages say he designates it, but it must not be separated. And if one designated true and Maaser of Demai, a Maaser Ani in an Ani of definitely untied produce, he may not take them on the Sabbath. If a priest or a poor person were accustomed to eat with him, they may come and eat, provided that he informs them. Okay. Yeah.
Next.
Yeah.
Nick.
And we are on to Gaiam. The Gaiam. Okay. The Zion Dalit. One who pulls out symptoms of tumor or one who burns a patch of living skin transgresses a prohibition. And concerning Tahara, as long as he does not come to the Kohen, he is Tahor. After his confirmation, he is Tameh. Rabbi Akiva said, I asked Rabbi Gamil and Rabbi Shua on the way to Gavad, if he removed the negative symptoms in the middle of confinement, what law applies to him? They said to me, we did not hear, but we did hear. As long as he does not come to the Kohen, he is Tahor, and after his confirmation, he is Tameh. I began bringing them proofs that whether one is standing before the Kohen or one is in the middle of confinement, When he destroyed the tummy symptoms, he is tahor unless he destroyed the tummy symptoms after the Kohen declared him tummy. And even when does he become tahor? Reb Eliezer says when another nega appears and he becomes tahor from it. And the sages say until it covers him completely or until the baharis becomes smaller than a gris. If someone had a baharis and was cut off, it becomes tahor. If he cut it off intentionally, Reb Eliezer says when another mega appears and he becomes tahor from it, the sages say until it covers him completely. If it was on the tip of the foreskin, he shall circumcise anyway. That which spreads completely from a tame becomes tahor, and if the extremities return to normal appearance, it becomes tame until the baharis becomes smaller than a gris. That which spreads completely from a tahor becomes tame, and if the extremities return to normal appearance, he remains tame until the baharis returns to the way it was.
Okay.
Okay,
Avos.
and avos. Okay, daled vav. Rabbi Yossi says, whoever honors the Torah is himself honored by people, and whoever disgraces the Torah is himself disgraced by people. Rabbi Yishmael, son of Rabbi Yossi, says, the one who withdraws from judgment removes from himself hatred, robbery, and the responsibility for an unnecessary oath. But one who is too self-confident in issuing legal decisions is a fool, is wicked, and is arrogant of spirit. He used to say, do not judge alone, for none judges alone except one. And do not say, accept my view, for they are prohibited to you, for they are permitted to, but not you. Okay. That's it.
No, that's it. That's it.
And we have Vamos. Okay, Vamos. So Yud Gimel Dalet. Test. If one was married to two minor orphans and died, if the Yavam cohabitated with the first one and then with the second one, or his brother cohabitated with the second one, he does not disqualify the first one. So too in the case of two deaf mutes. If one was a minor and one was a deaf mute, if the Yavam cohabitated with the minor and then the deaf mute, or his brother then cohabitated with the deaf mute, he did not disqualify the minor. If the Yavam cohabitated with the deaf mute, and then with the minor, or his brother then cohabitated with the minor, he disqualified the deaf mute. If one was competent and one was a deaf mute, if the Yavam cohabitated with the competent one, and then with the deaf mute, or his brother cohabitated with the deaf mute, he did not disqualify the competent one. If the Yavam cohabitated with the deaf mute, and then the competent one, or if his brother then cohabitated with the competent one, he is disqualified the deaf mute. If one was an adult and one was a minor, if the Yavam cohabitated with the adult and then with the minor, or if his brother then cohabitated with the minor, he did not disqualify the adult. If the Yavam cohabitated with the minor and then the adult, or his brother then cohabitated with the adult, he disqualified the minor. If Elabah says, we reach the minor to refuse it. We teach the minor to refuse it. Okay.
Okay. Good.
Terrific. Okay.